with a fresh new angle. And it's Q again with Save My EU, with the last episode before the elections. Maybe there will be something afterwards. But for today, I had to think long and hard which key subjects need to be talked about. One is populism. It is so much on the agenda, especially now with very current news about populist problems. Well, in several countries, they have raised newspaper headlines in not the very best ways. So that has to be taken care of. And the other issue, trade wars. USA versus, well, everything. So these two subjects are going to raise to the table, and let's see what we can get today. Try to keep with this very fast pace. So, populism. Where to start? There are so many viewpoints to populism and so many ways to look at it, so many ways to define it. But I figured I'm going to put some emphasis into looking at the backgrounds and the dilemmas, and I want to put a lot of time for solution ideas as well. But for first, there's going to be a quote of mine, which I'd like to introduce to you. A lot of this criticism towards populism. Now, I grant there is a lot of relevant reason, a lot of relevant and good reason to criticize populism, but why must it be done with a populist approach? Like, these people are the number one and only and ultimate evil to everything, and if you vote for these people, we will do everything to destroy them. I mean, politically, obviously, but still, the rhetoric used against populists is very populistic to my ears. And I hate the idea that when we have parties which are giving one-stop solutions, less EU and everything will be fine, everything is the fault of the immigrants and all that, and then we go into the same game and then say that they are the only and ultimate problem. If we get rid of them, this will be a paradise. So the criticism of populism often tends to take the form of populism. So who and what are we criticizing? I'd also like to point to you to another terminology that I come across with wireless networks, but it is generally about radio frequencies. I'd like to talk to you about signal-to-noise ratio. And basically, signal-to-noise ratio, short version is when you use a certain power to transmit the signal, only a part of that signal is received. So there's the signal and then there's the noise which is lost. And in often cases, like when you put wireless networks in place, if you have 10 access points, antennas around the building, and you blow them at 100% power, in many cases you get so much noise that you get less power out of them compared to if you were running them with, say, 15% power or something like that. And what I mean in politics is that if we move liberation and integration with all the force we can, then the opposition will be so strong that we will actually move a lot slower compared to if we were to take a more balanced approach. So this is one of the populism, the beginning, the reasons. It's obvious that we are moving to a more liberal way of seeing things in the EU. That's natural. We understand minorities. We understand different people. We don't isolate them, but we take them as part of our societies. This is natural. Society evolution has always happened. The problem sometimes is if you push way too hard, the backlash is just even harder. And I think this is something that we can see with Brexit and with Trump. Now, I'm not defending these movements, but I am trying to understand them. Moving on to another point of paradox here. The working person, so had an old car, comes home lazy, has a beer, eats some cheap meat, and this used to be someone the left cared for. So this is the worker who works so hard, and he or she, and the left supported them, saying that this is the victim of the markets. He's not paid enough, or she's not paid enough, and this person had support. Right now, this person with that old car and eating meat is now an enemy of the green socialist movement. So the same parties that used to be this person's biggest friend are now their biggest enemies. Now the populists claim that now we care about you, we're going to support you driving that old, ancient, smoking, polluting car off to eternity, just keep going. I mean, obviously, even if that person would want to drive a greener car, it costs money. But I mean, the populist approach is just, don't worry about a thing. Don't let the society change. Forget about climate change and just keep eating that meat. Even though naturally this is something we have to change. But the populists are saying that, okay, we'll support you. And oh, by the way, we're also horribly racist. And by the way, did you know that immigrants are the cause of every problem? And so I came to this thought after listening to a long discussion by this Mr. Peter Kradochvil. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that name, but visiting La Sapienza University in Rome. There was a long radio podcast with him, and if you can find more information and something in English from this person, that was very fascinating review, the reasons of populism and background. This is what inspired me to write those words. They're not his words, I emphasize, but I was rather inspired by his very wide viewpoint on the matter. Some points I didn't really agree with him, but he clearly had a vision. I wanted to thank him for those thoughts. So one thing is, the populists add racism. The worker feels, okay, well, I don't really want to hate the immigrant, but these guys are this is the only parties that support me and understand me, so I'll just have to take that racism to go. Of course, some of them do have racist views, but not all. And the more I look at members of populist parties, they're clearly the ones who see immigration in all ways and all forms as threat and skin color as the problem. But there are also those who don't get into that argument, and they really want to talk about workers, worker rights. But because nobody else is giving a proper form, proper understanding in the situation of the worker, then populism takes room. So establishment parties have moved a little bit too fast, signal to noise ratio. Okay, but what about populism? Is it the big thing here? Should we be worried? And I found something interesting here. Is populism on the rise? Yes, it is, but not everywhere. Populist parties potentially gaining in these elections in 5 countries: Finland, Germany, Italy, Spain, France. Just to emphasize, there are more than 5 countries in the European Union. So what about everywhere else? Other winners that are not considered populist parties in a lot more countries. Now, this is not all the countries, but this was gathered from a number of sources and together by the public broadcaster Yle, from Europe Elects, Politico, and Financial Times, various polls and others. Actually, social democrats seem to be on the rise in far more countries than populists. Perhaps they've gotten a better, clearer message now. So while there are reasons for populism to rise, it's not a universal constant that it's rising everywhere. And to be fair, there are countries where the previous administration has been so ultra corrupt that the populists really are affixed to that. course, as we've seen in very recent cases from Austria, that corruption seems to fit pretty well to the populists too. Of course, power corrupts. It corrupts on the left, on the right, up and down, populist, elitists, and all the others. So something to keep an eye for. And I suppose that's one good reason about democracy. It changes. The same people cannot hold power forever, and that takes off some of the edge of corruption. But moving on, let's talk about the problem in dealing with populists next. The two-rungs approach. So, one very common way is the populists are raising the subject of immigration, for example. Okay, let's just refuse to talk with them about that. And then they will go and say, look, they don't even want to talk about it. We just told you that the media hates us and the parties hate us. They have secrets. Now, look, we can prove it again here. And they can dominate the discussion and popularity goes up. So, obviously, there's a bad option. Well, maybe we should talk about them. Yeah, however, so if you talk with them on their agenda, on their playing turf, so to speak, they can give these rushed and quick answers because they really have planned and rehearsed their simple 10-word answers to immigration problems, their useful couple of statistics that they have. They can just toss them on the table and say that, okay, we have the answer, 1, 2, 3, there it is. And again, they seem to be winning the debate because they have the quick answers. You do not. The ones opposing populism don't have quick answers. Or in some cases, the quick answers might be just as bad. I mean, as noted in an earlier episode, it's really populist stupidity. Apologies for using a strong word, but to say that let's just close all the borders and everything will be fine. It is equally populist stupidity to say that let's just open all the borders and let everyone in and everything will be fine. Those are both wrong answers. And that's a little bit about what I'm going to, but let's take a few other mistakes in dealing with the populists. I mentioned a certain country in the East that's talked about too much. Here it is again. Very commonly when establishment parties talk about populists, all they can say is, yeah, you're Russian, you're working with Russians, you have Russian interests, you and Putin, this and that. Now, there is often cause for that. There are a lot of signs, Italy, France, for example, where the populists have a lot of dealings with Russia. Then there are many countries where the populists absolutely do not want anything to do with Russia and may even be the most Russia-critical party in the country. There are cases of this as well. It is a little bit more of a geographical question than a populist question. There is reason for criticism, absolutely, but to answer everything by saying Russia, 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 you and Russia, again, you're giving them the ball. And then they can say, oh, look, they're always just playing Russia. What are they afraid of? What things are they not wanting to talk about? Okay, moving on, one more problem on this list. We'll never play with these guys. This is something like, for example, Guy Verhofstadt has said recently that if you vote for populists, we will do everything to make sure that we will never, ever, 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 ever talk with them and we will not let them into any tables, and we will isolate them completely and utterly. Other top European politicians have said this too. That's the wrong approach. If you tell people that their vote doesn't matter, which is basically what you're saying here, it creates a very strong backlash. So you have to accept populist parties as being equal parties, equal representation, because anything else, democracy goes bye-bye. I could probably stop here for a little moment and talk about this. We'll never let them into our playground is one thing, but let's take the claim that populism is really the greatest threat the EU has. Let's put it out there. I lack the skill to say if that's the case, but let's assume that it is. Option one, behind door number one, we must do everything in our power to stop the rise of fascism again. We must use all democratic and, if necessary, non-democratic methods to prevent that from happening. Everything must be done. And behind door number two, if you use all possible power and all force, all methods to eliminate evil, you will become that very evil which you are not trying to destroy. Now, history teaches us of these both options, and both can go wrong. And I don't have a right answer for you, but this is a good question to keep in mind when thinking about the rise and threat of populism. Consider this. But I do have some suggestions to go with here. Let's see. I can answer, but not in 10 seconds. The populist wants to give you the 10-second answer. Just don't play that game. Refuse to play that game. Say that, yes, this is an important subject. We need to talk about it, but I'm not going to talk about it with shouting and with quick answers. This takes a little bit more time. Would you have 15 minutes? Then we can start looking into it. But more. Show deep knowledge. Show that you understand this matter, what people are worried about. Show that you understand it. Show that you understand the big picture. Use your skills to challenge the populist approach. Not attacking their person, not just throwing the Russia card, but really taking their claims, opening them up, and showing that they're very hollow inside. And remember, dreams alone aren't enough. Probably a good idea to show this too. It's good to dream of a better future and where you want EU and Europe to go. But dreams alone are not enough. Put some concrete into it. A lot of establishment operations, especially establishment Greens, have pretty much been riding on the dream bandwagon. Now, it's wonderful to dream about a better future, but you also need something a little bit more coherent. So don't attack the populism by saying that just believe in a better future and ignore all the racists. Put a little bit more content on the bread. Now for another way to combat populism. The European People's Party, now this is about 2-3-ish years ago, they had a campaign. I don't know if it's the same one as this local dialogue, but I'm going to get back to this matter soon. But they had a questionnaire online. They shared it through social media and in other ways. They asked people opinions about Europe and what do you think? Where should it go? What should it do? And it was a great questionnaire. There were good questions, and you had the option to write more words too. But what happened after that? They asked, they had the campaign running, and it ended, and yes, I was speaking silently, because nothing was heard about it afterwards. They should have continued on that. Now, 1,000 people answer that questionnaire. Okay, 100 of them give a little bit more coherent answers. 10 of them would maybe like to continue the discussion. These are people that are not members of political parties, but they have good ideas and viewpoints. They care about the EU. I mean, their resources should be put to use, but just ignored. Now, as noted, I tried to find out more about it. I couldn't find any information on that questionnaire from before. I looked at it at the time, but they had this EPP local dialogue, so I tried to find out what is this. There was nothing on the website. there were some listings. And then I Googled up more, and oh, they did have this. Look at it. This window here. There is their information. I thought I would try to download it here. Nope. EPP does not want you to download their brochure, but you have to view it here with all the casino advertisements. Then I could maybe find out. I'm sorry, people are not going to do that. Tell them what it's about. Not just EPP, ALDE, Greens, S&D, everyone. Connect with the people, connect with them locally, which I believe is what they're trying to do here. The main site, which I showed you earlier here, they did have listings of places where people are meeting. It's a good idea. Go locally, talk to people, and understand not everyone wants to be political party members. Disclaimer, I am a member of a political party. I'm not a candidate, as I've said. I'm a member of a political party because that way I get information, I get their magazines, I get interviews, background information. I have absolutely no power, and I never expected to have any power or any say there. I'm happy to just get information. But when people have something to say, let them say it. Now here's the thing. Okay, you have this local dialogue and get people to talk. When you have these people with interesting ideas, maybe they're useful, maybe not, but if you actually talk with them, give them proper, not just political, but more technical answers, see that you care what they talk about, then these people will go online on their social media and say, we just had a wonderful discussion. I spoke with this and this about that and that. That person spreads the feeling that democracy works. And that's what you need. These people can plant new seeds of growth into understanding and appreciating the European Union and democracy. This is what we need. So please, all parties and the EU, connect with people, talk with them. Don't just toss out a questionnaire. Don't just have one event on the EU day and offer them free coffee. Continuing dialogue. Talk with people. Let them see what this is all about. That's what works. If that's what the EPP is doing, good, but seriously brush up on your marketing. Okay, that's with some ideas for populism, and there is one more big thing on the agenda today. And that thing is trade wars, America versus Huawei. Evidence. This is a Huawei enterprise networking project, a wireless access point. We also have other of their products here in use because they're okay. They're good products. They have some things above the competition, some things below, average priced. They're just networking devices, really. I don't have any feelings for them. But let's look at the big picture here. So America decides to put trade war on China. And okay, USA versus China, obviously the EU isn't a part of that. But then our companies, America starts the trade war, but then our companies, Infineon and ARM, for example, also have to stop talking with the Chinese. Our consumers, there are so many Huawei and other Chinese brand phones. Remember, for example, Motorola is also Chinese owned. OnePlus, ZTE, many of these others, which might be on the very same block. And just suddenly taking away the data security of these people, that's what the Americans are threatening. We won't let you update your devices. We would have millions of devices with poor security. This could jeopardize the functionality of basic societies if that happened. Now, Huawei has promised it will not make that happen, and right now, I can't believe I'm saying this, I trust them more than I do trust Trump. So, but the risk is huge, and the EU cannot do anything. Our data security, yes, and our networks. We have a lot of mobile networks. almost every operator, at least a huge majority of them, have some Huawei network equipment. Like I said, why not? I mean, I'm not running an operator. This is just a medium-sized business. We have wireless networks and wired networks. But operators, all your mobile devices, they're running Huawei products along with Nokia, Ericsson, others. Naturally, they're running them because they're okay products. They've been looked over, under, inside out. There has yet to emerge a single fact about spying. Now, there have been bad business practices with Huawei. Certainly they have something they have to do, but the Americans aren't quite innocent about this either. But right now, America is deciding that they want to fight with China. And the EU just falls in line and goes with them. Because there really is not a single EU business that does not have some connection to USA. Thus, we all fall in line. And thus, the EU cannot keep its promises to its own businesses that follow EU laws and EU regulations, all will be fine. No. Immediately, when USA demands something, then the EU falls in line and our businesses suffer and the EU does nothing. The very moment this latest Google Huawei issue came to light, the EU should have called an emergency meeting of all parties in like the next 1 hour. They did nothing. If the EU cannot protect its businesses and its consumers, then that's a little bit of a problem. We really need to have our own part. I mean, naturally, we're strong allies with USA. NATO is a big part of keeping us safe. And of course, ironically, USA has blamed us for so long that we're not putting enough money into defense, and Americans have to take care of our defense because we're just too cheap. Well, we just let ourselves be dependent, and here we are. Here we've ended. But it's not just trade. Now, right now, I really wish the EU could protect our own companies and with an market open approach, responsibility approach, but no, we're just seen as the secretaries. But there is another logo. Okay, it's not a logo, but another picture to show here in relation to the same issue. Iran. So, to sum it up, Iran has lots and lots and lots and lots of problems. Their society is not very perfect. They don't have very good rights for their people. Granted, they've been threatening Israel for a long time. I'm not going to go into that whole Middle East debate. We'd be here all night. But Iran made a deal to limit their nuclear program. The EU was a signatory to this deal as well, and international observers have said that Iran is upholding the deal. Then the Americans say, nope, we're going to go out. We're just going to stop following the deal we made. We're just going to ignore it. So European businesses had a lot of operations in Iran. They were selling them this and that and those. USA says, we don't want this anymore. European companies, business stops right then and there. Because we're dependent on America and we can't make our own deals. We can't protect our own businesses. Now, I will grant the EU has done much to try to alleviate this. And I will commend the EU for seeing the problem seriously, but the end result is that nothing really has been done and the deal is falling down. And again, the EU has only been secretary for United States foreign policies, not its own independent party. And right now, Iran thought that, okay, we can make a deal with the EU, we can trust them to keep their end. They could not. EU did not uphold its end of the bargain because it had to fall down due to American interests. We can, of course, argue that Iran's problems require a harder approach, or we could very well argue that we now eliminated the softer forces any chance rising, liberalizing the country. And now they can say, this is what you get for trying to play fair. Americans are going to destroy it all and they're going to destroy us all. We have to be harder and harder lined. And we've already seen signs of this. And right now, we need the EU more than ever. There's absolutely no hope of individual member countries standing up to these levels of issues. And I will put a quote on here. The EU can either confirm its position as a subject or rise up to be a real partner. Right now, I think we are a subject empire of the United States. Now, we need to be friends and strong allies with the United States, absolutely. We have a historical and current day reasons for doing so, but we must be an independent entity in discussions, not just following all their demands and placing none of our own. Our technology needs to be independent, though of course open. And I'm sorry, but the situation really saddens me a little bit. EU has to be able to stand on its own 2 feet. It took America a long time before they were standing as a world power. It took them, well, at least 100 years. I'm not an expert in American history, but for a very long time, they were just subjects. Then they rose to become more independent, not just on paper, but in fact. After World War II, they became a world superpower. They played their cards right. Now, we don't need to be a world military superpower, but we need to be a fair trade partner. This is the challenge for EU, not just after the elections, but right now, today. I think the EU should emphasize on fair deals, fair open market, general openness where it's possible, and making sure that following the rules is a good idea. If you follow the rules as a European business situated in the EU, then the EU will protect your rights and make sure you can deal with openly and not be dependent on Trump's policies. We need the EU right now, and I really hope the EU can provide. You can do your part in it. Please go and vote in the elections. As I said, it'll make you feel better. Left or right, up or down, for or against, doesn't matter. It's your vote. You choose. But if you vote, you'll feel better and will manage a little bit better. Thank you for letting me discuss my mind on Save My EU. I promised a few more thoughts about the future. I've quite enjoyed studying these matters, learning more about the EU and deeper issues. And there's a lot more to talk about, like I didn't go into EU law. It's not really an election issue, so I figured I can do that anytime. Technology issues, well, we went into them today a little bit. There's a lot more. I mean, Brexit, could talk about that for a while too. So maybe I'll continue. Right now, though, I do have to retire for sick leave. It appears that not every bone in my body is intact, literally, and a little bit of time to heal is needed. I'll be away from the office and thus away from this basement studio that I've been using to practice. And I hope I get to study more, and perhaps in 2 weeks, give or take, I'll have some other thoughts, maybe analyze the election results, see where we're going. But as someone who loves bureaucracy, okay, not quite, but analysis, long analyses, long podcast interviews, getting to the bottom of things, it's been interesting to try to word out my own opinions and views from that. If I come back, I don't plan to shout, but still keep talking in a calm and orderly manner. Let's just file through the exits in the calm and orderly manner. Nobody ever does that, but they really should, because that would be good for fire safety. Good for fire safety, of course, would be that our EU works. And I'm giving both thumbs up. I hope this is not seen as a negative sign. A lot of finger signs seem to be problematic these days, but really, I wish the best for all voters, all future parliamentarians. I wish you to keep your eyes open, and right now, first and foremost, put your attention on the trade war and the troubles it's causing us. I wish you luck, and I hope to have more positive thoughts to say in the future. This is Q, signing off. Thank you.